Have you ever boiled a lobster? As the delicious crustacean descends into the lethal bubbles, air escapes the lobster's shell, and it sounds like a scream. It's not nice, but it is part of the process of preparing pleasurable nourishment. I'm very sorry to my vegetarian and lobster-loving viewers. I'm sorry, but still, the analogy is useful. And it brings us to the Republican Party today. Trust me, it will all make sense in a minute. First, the facts as we know them. Did Barack Obama win last night? Yes. Did he get more than 50% of the popular vote? Yes. Was it an electoral landslide? Sort of. If not a landslide, then at least a very serious mudslide. Did his party's control of both houses of Congress grow? Sure did. So what's the takeaway from all this? Well, obviously, it's that Barack Obama has no mandate to govern at all. And he ought to act just like the political party that he just defeated, because obviously they were the real winners. That was the scream of a lobster in scalding hot water as the pillars of republicanism claimed that the Obama administration has no political latitude to start with. Conservative columnist Bob Novak wrote about it today. He said, quote, "Obama neither received a broad mandate from the public nor the needed large congressional majorities." He didn't? You know, Bob, actually, we're all talking about last night's election. What election are you talking about? When President Bush barely won re-election, the first thing he bragged about was having earned political capital that he planned to spend. If his 2.5-point spread in the popular vote gave him capital to spend, how is Obama's 6% win not a mandate? Here's how my colleague and pal Pat Buchanan interpreted the results last night as they were happening.
Barack Obama's got some very serious problems ahead of him, and I think he's going to have to try to go down the center of the road.
Go down the center of the road? That was the lesson of last night, really? If President-elect Obama did want to reach across the aisle, who and what would he be reaching toward? And who and what would be reaching back exactly? The GOP is at square one right now. Who is their leadership? What are their guiding principles? Outside of John McCain's conciliatory and I thought grand concession speech, all we have heard so far is a ramping up of the anti-Obama stuff. We heard it even during the concession speech.
I had the honor of calling Senator Barack Obama to congratulate him. Please.
Bless him for trying to stop it. When the crowd was not booing Obama, they were chanting, "Sarah, Sarah!" Sarah Palin? She's the new Republican Party? Not much bipartisanship there. Just more scorched earth politics, or so it appears. Newsweek magazine revealed today, quote, Palin launched her attack on Obama's association with William Ayers before the campaign had finalized a plan to raise the issue. McCain had not signed off on it. Apparently, Sarah Palin's rogueness knew no bounds. And if she's not the new leadership of the Republican Party, who will be? Can you name any of these guys? Look at them. Take a second. Recognize them? Give up? That's the new power structure. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, who barely survived his re-election bid in Kentucky, House Minority Leader John Boehner, and House Minority Whip Roy Blunt. Did you write those names down? Could you say those names back to me right now if you had to? After successive electoral routs by the Democrats, the current Republican Party is sort of back to square one. If the Democratic Party is now the big tent, they're led by an African-American, a woman, and a Mormon, then what is the Republican Party? Right now, it is a leaky lean-to, and much like a country left in defeat after a war, I wonder if a political party left in defeat after an electoral defeat like this can be a dangerous thing for a country as well, especially in a time of national turmoil like we are facing now with 2 wars at hand and an economic crisis in full effect. Joining us now is former Republican Senator Lincoln Chafee of Rhode Island. He has had a complicated relationship with the Republican Party. After losing his re-election bid in 2006, he officially left the party to become an independent. He endorsed Barack Obama earlier this year. Senator Chafee, thank you for taking time to join us tonight.
My pleasure, Rachel.
It seems to me that the lesson the Republican Party may be taking from this presidential defeat is that they weren't ruthless enough. Senator McCain didn't play the Reverend Wright card early enough, often enough, or at all at the end. They didn't make Senator Obama scary enough. Do you get the sense that the GOP thinks that is the lesson to learn from last night, and are you concerned about that if that's the case?
Yes, and I'm not surprised. I expect some of the right-wing talk show people you mentioned, and even the Rush Limbaughs, and the Bill O'Reillys, and the Sean Hannitys, to immediately start out on this. And that strategy, the Karl Rove strategy, if you will, of energizing the base, motivating the base, it naturally divides the country. And in the past, it's been good at winning elections for Republicans, but terrible at governing. The Republicans have failed at governing. They've been great at winning elections by dividing the country and energizing the base, but then they've been an utter failure at governing because once you divide the country, it's so difficult to govern. But now they can't even win elections, so they're bankrupt on both cases. They failed to govern, and now they failed to win elections.
In looking at the reasons for Senator McCain's defeat, a lot of people on the right have said, well, it's really about the economy. If we hadn't had this economic collapse, he would have won this, or at least would have had a shot. It strikes me that that is a weird thing to call on as an excuse for electoral defeat. The idea that you would accept that you can't win when the issue is the economy and not even try to sell the idea that your party does have the right answers on the economy. Do you feel like there is an economic vision around which the Republican Party will recoalesce?
Well, don't forget that Bush Cheney and the Republican Congress inherited a surplus, a historic surplus, and squandered it in 8 short years. So I blame a lot of this economic meltdown on the lack of discipline the Republican Party showed in their leadership. We took a surplus and we squandered it with tax cuts, which cut our revenue, and watched our expenditures, whether it's the wars that we have overseas, or whether it's the farm subsidies that came back, or whether it's the prescription drug benefit to Medicare, all very, very expensive. And of course, a whole new Homeland Security, federal bureaucracies. These are all un-Republican type of initiatives. And that's, I think, the reason we're in this economic meltdown right now, because we lost all fiscal discipline. And I used to argue in my Republican caucus when I was in the Senate, it breaks my heart to hear the Democrats talking about fiscal discipline. That used to be such a Republican virtue, and it's completely been torn to shreds under the Bush-Cheney administration.
I am concerned, I have to say, moving forward and thinking about the specific policy challenges that lay ahead for the Obama administration. I'm concerned that what the Republican Party might try to coalesce around is not just fiscal discipline, but specifically anti-spending, that they'll become a force for sort of a Herbert Hoover-style response to the economic crisis, that they will oppose any spending that might be seen as a counter-cyclical force to try to save the economy. Do you see any risk that that is what the party will become, particularly around the issue like backlash to the bailout?
Yes, I do. Exactly as you mentioned, that backlash to the bailout, the House voting against it, particularly the Republican caucus, at a time that maybe we needed to have that investment. But I do think it would be difficult for the Republican Party to turn on a dime, if you will, to be the party that was the spend, spend, spend party over the last 8 years as I went through all those programs, adding to the federal spending program, at the same time cutting our revenues, to all of a sudden turn on a dime and say that we're going to be a party that's not going to be in favor of any kind of spending.
Senator Lincoln Chafee, former senator from Rhode Island, joined the independent, became a political independent in 2007. Thank you so much for your time tonight, sir. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.